You know that we have been told, oh, it's just a gimmick. You know, they sold their souls for rock and roll. That's true. That's true. See, Satan comes to these musicians and does what he basically offered to Jesus on a smaller scale and says, if you'll give me your soul, I'll give you all the money, all the fame, all the, sex, everything you could possibly ever want, if you'll just worship me and let me use you. See, God uses us as believers to further his kingdom. Satan uses his own to further his kingdom of darkness. Now, I'm going to quote for you from some pretty famous musicians. In their own words, documented, and you tell me if what I'm speaking to you is true or not. Okay? Little Richard. I was directed and commanded by another power, the power of darkness, the power of the devil, Satan. We must realize that there is a force that is fighting against us in the world. This is Little Richard. The devil was controlling our minds, directing our lives. Jimi Hendrix. I can explain everything better through music. You hypnotize people. And when you get people at their weakest point, you can preach into the subconscious what you want to say. That's why the name Electric Church flashes in and out. Led Zeppelin. Holy of Holies. We'll talk about them more in a minute. From the song Houses of the Holy, interesting song title. Let the music be your master. Won't you heed the master's call, O Satan? Tori Amos. I wanted to marry Lucifer. I don't consider Lucifer an evil force. I feel his presence with his music. His music. I feel like he comes and sits on my piano. David Bowie. Rock and roll has always been the devil's music. By the way, I'll finish a quote from him. Can I just parenthetically say this? Do not call Christian music Christian rock and roll, please. Because rock and roll is not the name, how do I say this? I'm trying to be pastoral here. It has a very sexual connotation. I saw a bumper sticker. I was picking my boys up from school the other day. I saw a bumper sticker that said Christian rock. Or no, it said God rocks. No. Jesus is my rock, but don't say Christian rock and roll. It has a very pagan and very demonic, and perverted meaning. David Bowie says, quote, rock and roll has always been the devil's music. My overriding interest was in Kabbalah and Crowleyism. Crowleyism? I'll talk more about Aleister Crowley in just a moment. That whole dark and rather fearsome netherworld of the wrong side of the brain. I'm closer to the golden dawn immersed in Crowley's uniform. Hit Parader magazine reported that Bowie would light candles, draw pentagrams on his walls while casting hexes and spells. Jerry Lee Lewis. No, some of you are gone. Thanks a lot. I know some of you younger people are going, Jerry Lee who? Quote, I have the devil in me. John Lennon. Quote, I've sold my soul to the devil. But my joy is when you're like possessed. This is John Lennon. like a medium, you know. I'll be sitting around and it'll come in the middle of the night or at the time when you don't want to do it. That's the exciting part. I don't know who the expletive deleted wrote it. I'm just sitting here and the whole expletive deleted song comes out. So you're like driven and you find yourself over on a piano or a guitar and you put it down because it's been given to you, or whatever it is that you tune into. The whole Beatle idea was, do what thou wilt. Do what thou wilt. Tom Cruise. Oh, no. Pastor JD, I hate you. That's okay. I don't mind. Quote, I have gained a lot from Scientology. I know what it is and how it can help people from my own personal involvement and study of the subject. The one super secret sentence that Scientology is built on is, do as thou wilt. That is the whole of the law. What law? The satanic law. Aleister Crowley was the teacher, the master, the mentor of this law. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. He was a self-proclaimed Satanist. Wrote books on Satanism and how to worship Satan through music. He was the inspiration for a lot of the bands that you and I would call the best bands of all time. The Beatles. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Do you see the circle there? That is a picture of Aleister Crowley. Ringo Starr said, we want to put people on the Sgt. Pepper's album that we, quote, like and admire. Hit Parade, October 1976. Paul McCartney said of the far from it, Sgt. Pepper's cover, we were going to have photos on the wall of all our heroes. One of the Beatles' heroes included Aleister Crowley. Most people, especially in 1967, did not even know who Crowley was, but the Beatles did. Crowley is believed to be Sgt. Pepper himself. Sgt. Pepper taught the band to play. Personal testimony. Before God delivered me, I would go into a altered state of consciousness and listen for hours to Beatles music. And when I would sing, and I don't have a good voice, but when I would sing perfectly as if it was another voice singing every word to every song verbatim. I knew it. And hours would go by. I didn't even realize how many hours had gone by. I was worshiping Satan through their music. They sold their soul for rock and roll. They sold their soul to the devil. Led Zeppelin. Huge influence from Aleister Crowley. Unbeknownst to most of us, much of the hellish music which they idolized was written and sang by devout followers of Crowley and his Satanism. Guitarist Jimmy Page, you have Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, devout followers of Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley proclaimed himself as, quote, the Beast, 666. In 1971, guitarist Jimmy Page bought Aleister Crowley's Boleskine house